Welcome back, friends. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm sure you are stuffed to the gills with food, but if you're still hungry and if you have leftovers, you have come to the right place. We are going to use up some of the delicious treats we made for Thanksgiving and create some new dishes and menus with new flavors so that you don't have the same old thing going on for days and days and days afterwards. So today we're going to make a turkey shepherd's pie and turkey polenta fritters. So we're going to start with that shepherd's pie. You know, normally shepherd's pie is ground beef, peas and carrots that are frozen out of a bag, and white potatoes mashed together, all kind of slopped in the oven, but we're going to use what we already have. You know from Thanksgiving that we made twice stuffed sweet potatoes. Some are savory and some are sweet, and they're all going to work great in this topping. So we're going to turn these into mashed potatoes. But I love garlic, and we haven't used garlic in a while, so I figured now would be a good time to get a clove or two in there. Remember, if your family doesn't like garlic, no problem. You can totally leave this out, but it is delicious, and it really helps balance some of the savoriness of those sweet potatoes that had the honey and the cinnamon. Having the garlic in there really balances that out. So we're going to add just one finely chopped clove of garlic. Remember, this is going to be baked, so it's no problem. You don't have to get it itty-bitty minced, but just finely enough to put in here. We're making mashed potatoes. This is a pretty standard mashed potato recipe. We're going to have milk, we're going to have butter, but I thought if we add a little bit of garlic, that'll be a nice addition to that as well. So in the bowl is going to go the garlic. Did you see you can just kind of scoop it up with your knife like that? That way you're not trying to gather everything. Just be careful if your blade is really sharp. You don't want to lose part of your hand. Then we're going to add these, skin and all, right on in. They're really soft. Some of these have goat cheese, some have sage, some have cinnamon. We're going to pop them right in the bowl. The skin is full of vitamins, especially if you're trying to find a way to get your kids to get more vitamins into their daily meals. Keep the skin on potatoes. On sweet potatoes, on white potatoes, they've got iron, they've got fiber, they've got great things in there. So, oh, this smells really great already. I've got whole milk here. If you have 2%, if you have cream, whatever you have is fine. It'll work just great. Just add enough to soften this up. I also have a little bit of butter. That'll help. It'll give it a nice brown coloring when we put it in the oven. I'm going to grab a spoon really quickly, get some of this in there. And then the last thing I have is some cheese. Again, if you like cheese in your potatoes, add it. If not, not the end of the world. But this is almost ready, and these look delicious. This is going to be the topping to our turkey shepherd's pie. Again, not your standard white potato, but full of great flavor and delicious with the skin. So I'm going to set this aside. Oh, this looks really great already. I'm going to set this aside and go make our sauce that's going to hold all of our veggies and our turkey together. Speaking of veggies, we roasted some sweet potatoes and some carrots with our turkey when we cooked it. And of course, we have a ton left over. I don't know about you all, but I always seem to think 1,000 people are coming over to eat for Thanksgiving. I really would love 1,000 people to come over when only 8 or 10 do. I have enough food left over to eat for months. If that's the case, this is a great way to get rid of some of those things you have left. So these are just sweet potatoes and carrots that have been roasted. I'm just going to finely chop through here with your knife. We're not looking for perfect pieces. You don't need to julienne anything. Just come through with a big knife like this and chop this up. This is going to be part of our filling with our turkey and our sauce and our delicious sweet potato topping. So just get these into kind of a bite-sized chunk. No exact size necessary. No worries whatsoever. And if you don't like sweet potatoes, or if you had something else, I wouldn't maybe put green bean casserole in here if you made that, but if you roasted parsnips or if you roasted regular potatoes, any other vegetable would be delicious in here as well. If you have some cauliflower left over, maybe you brown some up, delicious, pop it in here. So these are ready to go. Now, the next thing we need to do is make our sauce. We're going to make a basic bechamel, and bechamel is normally made with milk or with some other type of dairy cream. We're going to actually make ours with more stock than milk so that it's a little more figure friendly for these holiday times. So we're going to start off with a couple tablespoons of butter in here. Let that melt, and then like any other bechamel, we're going to add flour. And you want to add enough flour so that that's going to serve as our thickening agent. For those couple tablespoons, we'll probably put in a 1/4 cup of flour. Just eyeball it. Again, I don't like to measure. I don't measure very often. Do what looks right. It'll get thick. If it's not super thick, it's not the end of the world. No problem. This does not have to be an exact science. But but I'm going to grab a 1/4 cup measure and just see if that looks right. When you're making any sauce that starts with butter and flour, make sure you actually cook it for a few minutes so the raw flour taste goes away. If you just dump in the flour and then automatically add your milk or your stock, after a while it'll kind of taste gluey, and you don't want that to happen. So when your butter is melted, like this is, you're going to come in here and grab about a 1/4 cup of flour. Again, we get our flour from a local mill here, which is great. If you have a local mill, feel free to grab your flour there. If you don't, there are all sorts of flours that you can find. Specialty flours, plain flour in the bag, no problem. You just want to get this going so that you have a thickening agent for your stock and your milk. And this will cook for just a few minutes. Let's talk about the stock for a second. Stock is super easy to make. If you have bones left over from your turkey or from a chicken or from beef, if you do beef short ribs, any bones that are left make a great base for a stock. Keep them, freeze them, get bags and bags in your freezer full of these bones, and when you're ready and have a long time in a day, if it's rainy or gross outside, put them in a big stock pot, cover with water, put all your vegetable scraps in there as well, let it boil and boil and boil, and you will get delicious stock. This is left over from our turkey carcass. You can keep it in the freezer for months. It will not go bad. Some people even do a really neat thing. They'll freeze it in an ice cube tray and then pop them out of the ice cube size once they're finished. Then you just have little individual portions of stock, so you can just dump them in, and 5 or 6 of those are about a cup. So then you know you don't have this huge quart size that you have to defrost every time you just want a little bit of stock. So something to keep in mind when you're using stock. I can hear, again, if you don't make your own stock, not the end of the world. It's totally fine. They make stock in a box, they make stock in a can. You can get it from some grocery stores, have it in the back by the butcher, whatever works. Once this flour starts to cook, and you can hear it and you can smell it, it kind of starts to smell nutty. Then we'll go ahead and stir in some stock. Sometimes a whisk is really helpful because the flour wants to kind of clump up on you. We're going to let this go, and this is going to thicken. We're going to add herbs and spices and other things to this, but first we're going to let it thicken for a minute. We're going to get started on our turkey polenta fritters. If you remember from Thanksgiving, we had this awesome creamy whole corn polenta, and we have plenty left over. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat to create something with a new texture? Instead of the creamy polenta, find a way to make it crunchy and salty. So we're going to make fritters. And as you can see, we have lots of turkey left over. We've got white meat, we've got dark meat, whatever you prefer, you can shred right in here. So I'm going to shred some of this turkey. The other thing we're going to add is breadcrumbs. In order to get this polenta to stiffen up for us to make fritters, you do need to add breadcrumbs. You can add panko, you can add regular breadcrumbs. If you have breadcrumbs from a loaf of bread that you had at Thanksgiving, slice it up, dry it out, it's no problem. I'm going to get this shredded. I'm going to go ahead and put in our breadcrumbs, make our patties, get the oil hot, and when we come back, we'll finish up our shepherd's pie and fry up some polenta patties. See you in a second.